Dear ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak to the part of you that has been carrying silent weight for far too long. The part that smiles on the outside but holds storms on the inside. The truth is simple yet painful. You keep feelings that hurt you, and those feelings shape your life more than you realize. Many people walk through life unaware that the heaviest burdens they carry are not the responsibilities on their shoulders, but the emotions stored deep inside them. You carry anger that was never expressed, disappointments that were never processed, and wounds that were never allowed to heal. These feelings linger quietly, but their influence is loud. They shape the way you think, the way you speak, the way you react, and even the way you see yourself. You may believe you have moved on from certain situations, but your mind continues to replay them in the background, reminding you of what was said, what was done, and how it made you feel. In reality, the event is gone, the moment has passed, but the emotional imprint stays alive because you keep revisiting it. Sometimes you don't even realize how much space these emotions occupy. They sit in your chest like invisible anchors, affecting your mood, draining your energy, and limiting your ability to experience joy. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep enough, but because your heart has been carrying a weight that never gets put down. You may find yourself reacting strongly to small things, not because the trigger is big, but because you are already full. When your emotional cup is overflowing with unresolved feelings, even a drop feels like an attack. The truth is, many of these emotions no longer belong to you. They belong to a version of you that was hurt, confused, or unprepared, but today you still allow those old feelings to govern your present life. You allow past pain to dictate today's reactions. You allow the memory of someone's mistake to influence how you trust others. You allow an old wound to decide how deeply you let yourself love. It becomes a cycle of emotional recycling, reliving what should have been released long ago. You hold on to these emotions because the mind clings to what it knows. Even if a feeling is painful, it becomes familiar. It becomes part of your inner story, and so, without realizing it, you protect it, you justify it, you revisit it because it feels like a piece of your identity. But it is not. It is simply a leftover emotion that your heart never had the opportunity to set free. Sometimes the emotions you hold inside are not even yours to carry anymore. They may come from someone else's actions, someone else's unkind words, or someone else's decisions. Yet you continue to hold the consequences in your heart. You continue to relive the moment as if keeping the pain alive somehow keeps you safe. But in truth, it keeps you stuck. It freezes your growth and steals your peace. When you keep emotions that should have been healed, they begin to affect everything. Your relationships, your confidence, your clarity, your self-worth. They whisper lies in your mind. You're not enough. You can't trust. You will be hurt again. These lies become loud because you never silence the feelings behind them. And so they shape your life more than any external force ever could. You deserve to understand that life is not punishing you. It is your own emotional storage that often creates the suffering you experience. Sometimes the biggest enemy is not the event that hurt you, but the attachment you have to the emotion that came from it. You keep the feeling alive, and so the pain remains alive too. And until you acknowledge it, understand it, and release it, it continues to follow you like a shadow that darkens every bright moment. There is a strange truth about human beings. We often hold on to pain not because it feels good, but because it feels familiar. The mind develops an attachment to emotions it has repeated over and over again. Even when those emotions hurt, they become part of our routine. They become woven into the way we think, the way we respond, the way we interpret life. Over time, suffering becomes a habit. It becomes a constant companion, something you know so well that the idea of living without it feels foreign, almost frightening. This is why many people stay in emotional cycles they wish they could escape. Pain becomes predictable. You know exactly how disappointment feels, so you prepare for it. You know how betrayal feels, so you expect it. You know how sadness feels, so you accept it. Familiar suffering tricks the mind into believing it is safer than unfamiliar freedom. Because freedom requires stepping into a space where you cannot control the outcome, pain, on the other hand, is something you already understand. The mind is wired to avoid uncertainty. So when you attempt to let go of old emotions, a part of you resists. You may feel uncomfortable when things start to improve. You may unconsciously sabotage your own progress because the absence of pain feels strange. You may even recreate situations that bring back the familiar emotional patterns, just so your mind feels at home again. That is the power of familiar suffering. It convinces you that staying with the known pain is better than risking the unknown peace. This happens because painful emotions become part of the story you tell yourself about who you are. If you've been angry for years, that anger becomes your shield. If you've been hurt, the hurt becomes your identity. If you've been disappointed, disappointment becomes your expectation. And once an emotion becomes part of your internal narrative, letting it go feels like losing a piece of yourself. Even though that piece is made of pain, it still feels like yours. Sometimes you stay attached to painful emotions because they validate the story your ego wants to believe. If you were wronged, the anger confirms it. If you were betrayed, the sadness confirms it. If you were ignored, the fear confirms it. So you hold onto the feelings because they make sense of the past, but in doing so, you let them dictate your present. The mind clings to them because they offer a sense of psychological certainty, even if that certainty is built on suffering. There are people who feel uncomfortable in peaceful environments simply because chaos is what they are used to. Silence feels strange when your heart has been loud for too long. Calmness feels unfamiliar when your life has been filled with emotional storms. And because of this, you may unconsciously seek out the very experiences that recreate the hurt you've always known. Not because you want to be unhappy, but because your emotional system does not yet know how to live without that familiar weight. This is why healing is difficult. Healing requires stepping away from what hurts, even when your mind has built a home inside that hurt. Healing requires breaking emotional patterns that have been running inside you for years. Healing requires embracing a version of life you have never experienced before, a life without the constant presence of the feelings that once defined you. And so, familiarity becomes the silent reason people stay trapped in emotional pain. You cling to what you know, even when it limits you. You fear what you don't know, even when it could free you. Familiar pain becomes a comfortable prison, one where the door has always been open, but you never walked out because inside the cell, everything feels familiar, predictable, safe. But the truth remains, just because something feels familiar does not mean it is right for you. And just because something is unfamiliar does not mean it will harm you. The mind chooses what is known, but the heart longs for what is needed. Most people move through life carrying emotions they never stop to question. They allow anger, fear, guilt, or sadness to live inside them without ever asking whether these feelings still have a purpose. The truth is, many of the emotions you hold onto continue to shape your decisions simply because you never paused to examine them. You never asked why they are still here. You never asked what they are doing to your mental and emotional well-being. And because of this, old emotions become active forces that influence your present life without your awareness. Every emotion that lives inside you is like a tenant occupying space in your mind. Some tenants contribute to your growth. They teach you, guide you, protect you. But others do nothing but drain your energy, cloud your judgment, and hold you back. Yet you allow them to stay, not because they deserve to stay, but because you never asked them to leave. You never questioned their function. You never asked whether their presence is still necessary. There are feelings you carry that once served a purpose. For example, anger may have helped you survive a painful moment. Fear may have protected you from being hurt again. Sadness may have helped you realize the depth of your attachment, but that was then. Today, those emotions may no longer be relevant. They may no longer protect you. They may be harming you. They may no longer guide you. They may be blinding you. Yet you hold on to them as if they are still serving your best interest. When you don't evaluate your emotional landscape, you begin to believe that every feeling is valid simply because you feel it. But emotions are not always truthful. They are not always accurate. They are not always connected to the present moment. Many emotions are old echoes of experiences that happened years ago, and yet, without questioning them, you respond to life today with reactions born from a past that no longer exists. This is why it becomes essential to slow down and interrogate your feelings. Ask yourself, why am I still angry about something that ended long ago? Why am I still scared of situations that no longer threaten me? Why do I still feel unworthy because of a mistake I made when I was younger? Why do I still carry guilt for something I have already learned from? These questions are not meant to erase your emotions. They are meant to reveal their truth. Because when you ask the right questions, you uncover the reality that many of your feelings have overstayed their purpose. They continue to influence your behavior simply because you never took the time to understand them. There are emotions you treat as if they are permanent parts of who you are, when in reality they are temporary visitors that have turned into long-term residents. They stay because you never challenge them. They stay because you never examine them, and so they take control of your mind without your permission. And questioned emotions have the power to twist your perception. They make you see threats where there are none. They make you assume the worst even when the situation is neutral. They make you push people away, doubt your abilities, or sabotage your own happiness. They distort the lens through which you see yourself and the world around you. And the longer you allow them to stay unexamined, the more control they take. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. Some stones are heavy, some are light, but all of them weigh you down. You've been carrying this backpack for so long that you don't even question what's inside. You simply accept that this weight is part of your life. But the moment you open the backpack and inspect each stone, you realize that most of them don't belong to you anymore. Some are from situations that ended years ago. Some represent people who are no longer part of your life. Some were placed there by past versions of yourself that no longer exist, yet the weight remains because you never examined it. This is how emotions work. They accumulate in your inner world, and unless you question them, they remain untouched for years. But the moment you examine them, you gain clarity. You begin to see which emotions are genuine reflections of your current reality and which are remnants of old pain. When you question your emotions, you take back control from the past. You reclaim your power. You separate what is real from what is remembered. And you finally understand that some emotions have stayed far longer than their purpose, but without questioning them, you give them the authority to dictate your life. Letting go is one of the most misunderstood forms of healing. Many people believe that releasing past emotions means erasing what happened, forgetting the lessons, or pretending the pain was insignificant. But that is not what letting go means at all. Letting go is not an act of denial, it is an act of liberation. It is the quiet, courageous decision to stop carrying emotional weight that is no longer meant for your journey. It is the moment you stop allowing the past to write the next chapters of your life. When a painful experience occurs, it leaves two things behind: the memory of what happened and the emotional imprint of how it made you feel. The memory is simply information. It belongs in the story of your life, and it has every right to stay. But the emotional imprint is different. That imprint is like a wound that never closes because you keep touching it, reopening it, reliving it. Letting go means allowing that wound to finally heal, even though the scar, the memory, remains. Many people confuse healing with forgetting. They think if they stop feeling the hurt, they're somehow betraying themselves or letting someone else get away with it. But true healing is about reclaiming your power, not rewriting the story. You can remember the past without suffering from it. You can acknowledge what happened without letting the emotion govern you. You can carry the lesson without carrying the pain. Holding onto old emotions is like trying to walk forward while staring at the ground behind you. You may move, but the progress is slow, unsteady, and draining. Letting go shifts your gaze back to the path ahead. It doesn't deny the existence of the past. It simply stops giving the past permission to paralyze the present. Sometimes people hold on to pain because they fear that releasing it invalidates their experience, but it doesn't. Validation comes from acknowledging that you were hurt, mistreated, or misunderstood. Freedom comes from deciding that you will no longer allow that event to chain your heart. You honor the past by learning from it, not by letting it dominate your emotional world. Letting go is a process, not an instant action. It requires patience with yourself. It requires the willingness to sit with your feelings, understand them, and gradually loosen the grip they have over you. It demands vulnerability, the kind where you admit that you have outgrown the emotions that once defined you. It demands honesty, the kind where you face the truth that holding on to pain will not change the past, but releasing it can change your future. Letting go also means stepping into a space of emotional clarity. When you release the weight of old emotions, you create room for new experiences, new perspectives, new relationships, and new versions of yourself. Pain occupies space, fear occupies space, guilt occupies space. When these emotions sit inside you for too long, they become barriers to growth. But when you let them go, you create emotional space for possibilities that were previously blocked. And there is another truth. Holding on to pain does not punish the person who hurt you, it punishes you. It keeps you tied to an event that is no longer happening. It keeps you emotionally connected to a moment that deserves to be closed. Letting go is not an act of weakness. It is an act of emotional maturity. It is the recognition that you cannot rewrite the past, but you can reshape your relationship with it. Letting go also requires trust. Trust that you are strong enough to live without the weight that has become familiar. Trust that the absence of pain does not mean the absence of meaning. Trust that your heart knows how to heal once you stop feeding the old emotions. Trust that the next version of yourself will thank you for releasing what you've carried for too long. In the end, letting go is an act of freedom. Not freedom from the memory, not freedom from the lesson, but freedom from the emotional suffering attached to it. It is choosing to live without being emotionally chained to a version of yourself that existed in a painful moment. It is choosing peace over punishment. It is choosing growth over stagnation. It is choosing yourself over your past. Choosing yourself is one of the most transformative decisions you will ever make. Yet it is often the hardest. For years, many people place their emotions, their needs, and their healing at the bottom of their own priority list. They give their energy to others, their time to responsibilities, their heart to situations, but they rarely pause to give anything to themselves. And because of this, they continue carrying feelings that hurt them, not because they deserve the pain, but because they forget that their own emotional well-being matters just as much as everything else in their life. There comes a moment, however, when life forces you to confront the truth. No one else is responsible for the emotional world inside you. No one can rescue you from your internal storms. No one can heal the wounds you continue to reopen. No one can free you from the memories you keep revisiting. Choosing yourself means recognizing that your peace is your responsibility. Your healing is your responsibility. Your emotional freedom is your responsibility. Not because others don't care, but because only you have the power to remove the chains you placed on your own heart. When you choose yourself, you begin to see the difference between what you feel and what you deserve. You may feel unworthy because of past experiences, but deep down, you deserve love. You may feel broken because of past mistakes, but you deserve forgiveness. You may feel stuck because of old emotions, but you deserve freedom. Choosing yourself is the moment you stop letting the past dictate what you are allowed to receive in life. It is the moment you finally say, I deserve better, not because I am perfect, but because I am human. Choosing yourself does not mean becoming selfish. It means becoming aware that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give peace to others while your heart is filled with chaos. You cannot support others while you are silently drowning in your own emotions. You cannot love deeply if your heart is weighed down by unresolved pain. When you choose yourself, you nourish your soul so you can show up with strength instead of exhaustion, clarity instead of confusion, peace instead of emotional instability. There is great strength in choosing yourself because it requires facing truths you might have avoided. It means standing in front of your emotional mirror and acknowledging the feelings you've kept hidden for years. It means admitting that some of the wounds you carry are ones you continue to reopen. It means accepting that healing will not come from waiting for others to change, apologize, or understand. Healing begins when you decide your well-being matters more than holding onto pain that no longer serves you. Choosing yourself means allowing yourself to walk away from anything that steals your inner peace, whether it is a situation, a person, a memory, or even your own thoughts. It means granting yourself permission to rest from the emotional battles that exhaust you. It means rebuilding a relationship with yourself based on compassion, not criticism. It means speaking to yourself with kindness, believing in your own worth, and treating yourself with the same care you give to people you love. One of the most powerful changes that happens when you choose yourself is the shift in your emotional energy. The moment you decide to stop nurturing the feelings that hurt you, your heart begins to reclaim its strength. You no longer react from old wounds, you respond from new awareness. You no longer operate from fear, you act from clarity. You no longer see yourself through the eyes of the past, you begin to recognize who you've become. Choosing yourself is the beginning of emotional independence, where your peace is no longer at the mercy of external events. And perhaps the most beautiful part of choosing yourself is that it allows you to rewrite your inner story. You shift from being a prisoner of old emotions to being the author of your next chapter. You stop waiting for someone else to save you and realize you can save yourself. You stop letting your pain define you and begin to let your healing shape you. You stop apologizing for being human and start celebrating the courage it takes to grow beyond the feelings that once held you back. Choosing yourself means saying yes to your future, even if your past has been heavy. It means saying yes to the possibility of peace, even if chaos has been familiar. It means saying yes to love, even if heartbreak has left scars. It means saying yes to the person you are becoming, even if you are still learning how to let go of who you were. It is a declaration of self-respect, a reclaiming of inner power, and the first true step toward emotional freedom.